They came without armor. They screamed like beasts. They did not feel pain. And when the battle ended, entire fields were left soaked in blood. For centuries, their legend has haunted Europe. Men who fought like monsters. Men who seemed possessed. Men who stood at the front of Viking armies and shattered enemy lines through sheer terror alone. They were called berserkers. To some, they were heroes chosen by the gods. To others, demons wearing human skin. And to modern historians, they are one of the most misunderstood warriors in all of human history. But who were the berserkers really? Were they drug-fueled madmen? Elite special forces of the Viking Age? Or victims of ritual psychology and religious beliefs so powerful it transformed ordinary men into living weapons? Tonight, we separate myth from fact, legend from archaeology, and saga from science, to uncover the terrifying truth behind the Viking super soldiers. Because the berserkers were not fantasy. They were real. The moment the world met the berserker, the year was 793 AD. On the coast of England stood the monastery of Lindisfarne, a holy place believed to be protected by God himself. Then the ships arrived. Dark shapes cut through the mist. Oars rose and fell in perfect silence. And when the Vikings stormed ashore, something unusual led the attack. Men who wore no armor. Men who howled like wolves. Men who charged forward, biting their shields and striking with uncontrollable fury. The monks who survived wrote of warriors who seemed immune to steel. Men who laughed as blades struck them. Europe had never seen anything like it. And from that moment forward, a single word began to spread through whispered prayers and terrified rumors. Berserker. What does berserker actually mean? The word berserker comes from Old Norse, but its meaning has been debated for centuries. There are two main interpretations. The first is bear shirt, ber meaning bear, serker meaning shirt or tunic. This suggests warriors who wore bear skins into battle, symbolically becoming the animal itself. The second interpretation is bear shirt, meaning fighters who wore no armor at all. Both may be correct. Because berserkers were known for fighting half-naked, often clad only in animal pelts, exposing themselves to enemy weapons as an act of fearlessness or defiance. But to the Vikings, this was not madness. It was transformation. Warriors of Odin berserkers were not ordinary soldiers. They were deeply connected to Odin, the All-Father, god of war, wisdom, death, and frenzy. According to Norse belief, Odin granted chosen warriors a supernatural battle rage known as berserkergang. During this state, the warrior would feel no pain, ignore fear, gain immense strength, lose all sense of self-preservation. The sagas describe it vividly. They howled like wild beasts, bit their shields, and were strong as bears or bulls. Fire did not burn them. Iron did not cut them. To enter berserkergang was to step beyond humanity. And in Viking culture, this was sacred. Elite shock troops of the North. Despite their wild reputation, berserkers were not undisciplined. They were elite warriors, often serving as king's bodyguards, shock troops at the front of battle, champions in ritual duels. Kings valued berserkers not just for their strength, but for the psychological terror they inspired. Imagine standing in a shield wall, hearing howls echo across the battlefield, seeing half-naked men charge without hesitation, watching them smash shields apart with axes while laughing. Many enemies broke ranks before contact was even made. In warfare, fear is often more powerful than steel, and berserkers were fear weaponized. Not every Viking could become one. Berserkers were rare. The sagas suggest they were selected, not trained in the traditional sense. Some were believed to be born with the gift, others underwent rituals, isolation, fasting, and spiritual preparation. They lived on the edges of society, respected, feared, and sometimes avoided. Because while they were deadly in battle, they were dangerous in peace. The dark side of the berserker. The same rage that made berserkers unstoppable warriors made them unpredictable. Historical texts suggest that after battle, berserkers would collapse into exhaustion or fall into violent fits. Some sagas describe them killing allies by accident. Others tell of men who could not return to normal life. As Viking society became more organized and Christianized, berserkers began to be seen as too dangerous. Eventually, they were outlawed, but by then, their legend was already immortal. In the next part, we will uncover the most controversial question of all. Were berserkers using drugs? What does science say about berserkergang? And how much of their power was psychological, rather than supernatural? Because the truth may be even more unsettling than the myth. To truly understand the berserkers, we must step inside their minds. Because what made them terrifying was not just how they fought. It was how they felt nothing at all. Blades cut flesh. Bones shattered. Blood poured. And still, they advanced. For centuries, scholars have asked the same question. How is this possible? The drug theory, mushrooms of madness. One of the most popular explanations is also the most controversial. That berserkers fought under the influence of hallucinogenic drugs. The primary suspect? Amanita muscaria, the red and white spotted fly agaric mushroom. This mushroom grows naturally across Scandinavia and Siberia and was used in shamanic rituals by northern cultures for centuries. When consumed, Amanita muscaria can cause intense aggression, heightened strength perception, reduced sensitivity to pain, visual distortions, loss of fear. To modern ears, this sounds like a perfect explanation, but history is rarely that simple. Why the mushroom theory falls short. There is no direct archaeological evidence that Viking berserkers used Amanita muscaria in battle. No saga explicitly states it. No burial contains clear traces, and the mushroom's effects are wildly unpredictable. Some users experience euphoria, others suffer nausea, paralysis, or delirium. Not exactly ideal for combat. Modern toxicologists point out that Amanita muscaria often causes loss of coordination, which contradicts descriptions of berserkers fighting with precision and power. So, if not mushrooms, what else could explain berserkergang? The alcohol and herb theory. Another possibility is strong alcohol combined with herbal stimulants. The Vikings brewed potent ales and meads, sometimes infused with plants that could enhance aggression or dull pain. Certain herbs, now lost or unidentified, may have been used ritually before battle. But again, no definitive proof survives, which leads us to a far more unsettling explanation. Berserkergang, the power of the human brain. Modern neuroscience offers a chilling answer. The berserkers may have hacked their own nervous systems. Extreme stress can trigger a massive release of adrenaline, norepinephrine, and endorphins. These chemicals can temporarily block pain, increase strength output, narrow focus into tunnel vision, suppress fear and hesitation. Soldiers, athletes, and survivors of trauma report similar states even today. But berserkers didn't stumble into this state accidentally. They trained themselves to enter it on command. Ritual as a weapon. Before battle, berserkers performed rituals designed to strip away identity and awaken the animal within. These rituals likely included fasting, isolation, chanting and drumming, wearing animal skins, mock combat, self-hypnosis. By the time battle began, the berserker was no longer a man. He was a bear, a wolf, a force of nature. In modern terms, this is known as dissociation, a mental state where pain, fear, and identity are temporarily shut down. Elite military units still train similar techniques today. The difference? The Vikings wrapped theirs in myth. The shield-biting ritual. One of the most famous berserker behaviors was biting their shields. This wasn't random madness. It was ritualized aggression, designed to spike adrenaline, terrify enemies, and signal total commitment to battle. By biting the shield, the berserker symbolically crossed a line. There would be no retreat, only destruction. Wolves, bears, and shapeshifting. Some berserkers were called ulfhednar, wolf warriors who wore wolf pelts instead of bear skins. Norse mythology blurred the line between man and animal. To become a berserker was to shapeshift, not physically, but spiritually. Enemies believed they were fighting monsters, and belief alone can break armies. The aftermath of fury. But berserkergang came at a cost. After battle, berserkers often collapsed for hours or days, their bodies depleted, their minds shattered. Some experienced uncontrollable violence even after combat ended. This made them both invaluable and dangerous. When the world changed as Scandinavia embraced Christianity, berserkers became a problem. The church viewed them as possessed by demons. Kings saw them as unpredictable threats. Law codes began to outlaw berserkergang. By the 11th century, berserkers were no longer celebrated. They were hunted. But their disappearance did not end their influence. Because in the final part, we will explore how berserkers shaped medieval warfare, what archaeology reveals about their weapons, and why their legend still echoes in modern special forces, pop culture, and psychology. The age of the berserker was ending, but the idea of the unstoppable warrior was just beginning. Legends are born in stories, but berserkers were forged in battlefields. They did not exist only in myth or poetry. They stood in real wars, under real kings, against real enemies. And when they appeared, the rules of combat changed. Berserkers as shock weapons. In Viking warfare, timing was everything. Most battles were decided not by prolonged fighting, but by who broke first. Berserkers were deployed at the front of the formation, before the shield walls fully clashed. Their purpose was simple: break the enemy's will. They charged screaming, weapons raised, bodies exposed, drawing missile fire, absorbing the first blows, and forcing panic. Against untrained levies or terrified monks, it worked flawlessly. Fear shattered discipline. Once the enemy line wavered, the rest of the Viking force surged in. The berserker was not chaos. He was strategy. The king's men. Contrary to popular belief, berserkers were not lone wanderers. Many served directly under kings and jarls. In the sagas, they are described as huskarlar, elite household warriors entrusted with protecting rulers. King Harald Fairhair of Norway famously employed berserkers as his personal champions. But even kings feared them, because berserkers obeyed strength, not law. Berserkers in the sagas. The Icelandic sagas give us the clearest descriptions of berserkers in action. In Egil's saga, berserkers are portrayed as brutal and nearly unstoppable, but also socially disruptive. They challenge men to duels. They take what they want. They respect only power. This duality is critical. Berserkers were admired in war, but despised in peace. Archaeology and the warrior elite. Unlike ordinary Vikings, berserkers rarely left clear archaeological signatures. There are no graves labeled berserker, but there are clues. High-status warrior burials containing massive two-handed axes, decorated helmets, bear or wolf imagery, evidence of repeated battle trauma. Some graves show healed wounds that should have been fatal, suggesting warriors who fought through injuries that would cripple others. Animal motifs carved into weapons and armor suggest symbolic identification with beasts. Not proof, but powerful hints. Weapons of terror. Berserkers favored weapons designed for maximum impact, not finesse. Axes, especially the Danish axe, were devastating against shields and armor. Swords, while prestigious, were less common. A berserker needed a weapon that could split a shield, or a man, in a single blow. Speed mattered. Ferocity mattered. Survival did not. When berserkers failed. Despite their fearsome reputation, berserkers were not invincible. Against disciplined formations, Roman-style shield walls, trained knights, or heavily armored troops, their lack of protection became a liability. Arrows, spears, tight formations. These neutralized the shock factor. As warfare evolved, the berserker became less effective and more dangerous to allies. The beginning of the end. By the 11th century, Scandinavian law codes explicitly banned berserkergang. In Iceland, entering a berserk rage could result in exile or death. Christian morality rejected ecstatic violence. Kings wanted soldiers who obeyed commands, not frenzy. The berserker no longer fit the world he helped conquer. From warrior to monster. Stories changed. Berserkers became villains, outlaws, brutes, symbols of pagan savagery. Their divine rage was rebranded as madness, and slowly they vanished from history. But legends do not die easily, because in the final part, we will explore how berserkers influenced modern military psychology, why elite forces still study controlled aggression, and what the berserker reveals about the darkest and most powerful corners of the human mind. The Vikings may be gone, but the berserker? He never truly disappeared. The berserkers are gone. Their howls no longer echo across frozen fields. Their axes no longer split shields beneath gray skies. And yet, their spirit never truly vanished. Because the berserker was never just a Viking. He was something older, something universal. The berserker as a human constant. Long before Scandinavia had a name, humans understood one terrifying truth. In moments of extreme danger, the mind can become a weapon. Across cultures, we find the same archetype. The Spartan warrior entering battle trance. Celtic champions who fought naked. Samurai embracing death before combat. Indigenous warriors using ritual to suppress fear. Different cultures. Same outcome. The berserker was the Viking expression of a biological switch buried deep in the human brain. Modern science and ancient fury. Neuroscience now confirms what the Vikings believed through myth. Under extreme stress, the brain can shut down pain receptors, flood the body with performance-enhancing chemicals, override moral hesitation, prioritize survival and aggression. This is not magic. It is evolution. The berserkers did not discover something supernatural. They discovered how to control something natural. Berserkers and modern warfare. Modern militaries avoid uncontrolled rage, but they study controlled aggression closely. Elite units train soldiers to function under overwhelming stress, suppress fear and pain, act decisively in chaos. The difference is discipline. Where the berserkers surrendered to the storm, modern soldiers ride it. Still, the principle remains unchanged. Fear is the first enemy. Why the berserker had to die. Viking society evolved. Raids became kingdoms. Tribes became laws. Fury became liability. The berserker was too unpredictable, too dangerous, too free. In a world ruled by order, the berserker could not survive. And so he was erased, not because he was weak, but because he was too powerful. From history to legend, today, berserkers live on in fiction, video games, films, heavy metal, military mythology, often misunderstood, often exaggerated, but always feared, because deep down we recognize them. They remind us of what humans can become when survival overrides civilization. The final truth: the berserker was not invincible. He was not immortal. He was not supernatural. He was human. And that is what makes him terrifying, because the same capacity for rage, fearlessness, and destruction still exists in all of us. The Viking berserkers were not monsters of legend. They were mirrors. And sometimes, the most frightening thing is not what history shows us, but what it reveals about ourselves.